Grace, a successful 45-year-old businesswoman, has spent her life building her company and taking care of her family. She is married to David, a charming but controlling entrepreneur. She had dreamed of building a family filled with love and laughter. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. David was attentive and loving, but as time went on, his ego began to grow. His charm turned into condescension, and his occasional sharp words became relentless emotional abuse. He controlled every aspect of Grace's life, her career, her friends, even her appearance. Grace, a naturally ambitious woman with a sharp mind, was forced to abandon her dreams of running her own business. She stayed for their daughter, Ella, hoping that David would change. But things only worsened when David began having affairs, flaunting his infidelity without remorse. One day, Grace walked into her bedroom and met her husband having an affair with a strange woman on their matrimonial bed. Out of shock and disappointment, she rushed to the living room and began crying. She confronted David afterwards, but he wasn't remorseful, rather resorted to slapping her, which led to a heated argument between them. The rancor ended with David hurling cruel insults on Grace and breaking a vase. Grace decided she'd had enough. Holding 12-year-old Ella tightly, she began packing their bags. "You're nothing without me, Grace. You think you can survive out there? Huh? You're just an ordinary woman pretending to be someone important," David said, pointing a finger at her. "I've given you everything, David, my love, my dreams, my youth. And all you've done is trample over me," Grace said, holding back her tears. "Oh, stop with the drama. No one will ever love you the way I do," David said, laughing out mockingly. Grace gathered courage and said to him, "You're right. No one will ever love me the way you do, because this isn't love." David stared in shock as Grace grabs a suitcase. Ella looks up at her mother with a mix of fear and admiration as her mother held her by the hand and stormed out of the house. She left in the middle of the night. With no plan but a fierce determination to protect her daughter, Grace moved to her friend Sandra's place that night, as that was the only place for her to clear her head before figuring out how she could start over. Few weeks later, Grace rented her own apartment and moved in with her daughter. She began piecing her life together. One of the businesses she did before her husband told her to quit and focus on the home front was catering. Grace loved cooking and cooked so well, she had been invited to cater in events hosted by top politicians and celebrities on several occasions. She decided to continue her catering business, pouring her love for cooking into her work. The business thrived, and she became a well-known caterer in the community. But Grace's heart remained guarded. She vowed never to let a man control her again. 3 years later, Grace got a contract to cater for an art exhibition. She arrived at the venue wearing a simple but elegant dress. Her confidence fully restored but her guard still up. After the event, she was packing her food trays at the table when a gentleman wearing a paint-splattered shirt, looking slightly out of place, walked in among the polished crowd. He notices Grace and approached with a warm smile. "Excuse me, but I have to ask, did you make this jollof rice?" he asked. "Guilty as charged." "That bad?" Grace said, laughing softly. "Bad? It's so good, I'm considering abandoning my art career to become your sous chef." The young man introduced himself as Ken. Ken was a 29-year-old artist whose vibrant, soulful paintings were the talk of the town. He was kind, funny, and deeply passionate about his craft, but was still struggling to make a name for himself. Ken had worked on some of the paintings presented at the art exhibition. He continued to lean on the table, clearly intrigued by her. "But seriously, your food is incredible. It's like art on a plate. Are you the artist behind this catering company?" "You could say that. I started it a few years ago. It's my way of rebuilding after life knocked me down," Grace said, smiling modestly. "I get that. Art saved me too. Every stroke on the canvas is a fight to find myself again. The eyes met, and there's an unspoken understanding between them. Before Grace can respond, a guest interrupts, pulling her away. Ken watched her leave, his curiosity piqued. As the evening progresses, Ken keeps finding excuses to talk to Grace. He finally asks about her catering business. "I don't know what's more artistic, your food or these paintings," Ken said from behind Grace, who was still busy packing her trays. "Well, I'm flattered, but I think the paintings win," Grace said, chuckling. "I disagree. These spring rolls masterpieces." They both laughed as Ken continued. "You must have poured your heart into this. I can tell. I had to start over. Life doesn't always go as planned," she said, smiling softly. "Starting over takes courage. I admire that." He assisted Grace in loading the trays into her car, and they exchanged contact before saying goodbye. Grace and Ken started talking frequently on the phone, chatting late into the night as if they had known each other for years. Ken eventually invited Grace out on a date, and she agreed. Grace found herself spending most of her time on the phone with Ken. It was clear that he had fallen deeply for her, which he made known to her. Though their connection was undeniable, Grace initially resisted. She was 16 years older than Ken, and the idea of dating a younger man felt absurd to her. But Ken was persistent in the most respectful way. He admired Grace not just for her beauty but for her strength and wisdom. Slowly, Grace allowed herself to open up to the possibility of love again. She said yes to Ken and they began to date officially. Grace's now 15-year-old daughter, Ella, was not pleased. Having witnessed her mother's pain with her father, she was fiercely protective of her and suspicious of Ken's intentions. "Mom, he's just using you," Ella would say. "What does a young guy like him want with a woman your age?" The backlash didn't stop there. Grace's friends and family, many of whom had supported her, were shocked. "Grace, you're too old to be acting like a schoolgirl," her elder sister scolded. "This is embarrassing for the family." Ken's friends weren't any kinder, accusing him of dating Grace for her money and stability. The pressure weighed heavily on their relationship. Grace began to doubt herself, wondering if the naysayers were right. Meanwhile, Ella's constant disapproval created a rift between mother and daughter. Grace tried to explain, but Ella felt betrayed. "You're supposed to set an example for me, not act like some desperate woman," Ella sneered angrily. One day, Grace and Ken were sitting on the porch, laughing over a shared joke, when Ella stormed in. "Are you serious, Mom? Why are you acting like a teenager?" she said angrily. "Ella, Ken makes me happy. Can't you just try to understand?" Grace responded calmly. "Understand what?" "That you're dating someone who could be my older brother." She glared at Ken. "What do you even want with her? Money? Stability? You're a joke." "I get it, Ella. You're protective of your mom. But I'm not here to hurt her," Ken said gently. Ella turned to her mom. "You're embarrassing yourself and me," she said harshly and stormed off. Grace looked heartbroken. Ken placed a reassuring hand on hers. "She'll come around. She just needs time." One day Grace was having dinner with her eldest sister Bella. Bella, like every other person, wasn't pleased with Grace's relationship with Ken as well. She decided to talk to Grace as an elder sister would. "Grace, have you lost your mind? What will people say? A woman your age with a boy that young? Ken is not a boy. He's a man who respects me, something David never did," Grace affirmed. "It's not about David. It's about dignity." "What example are you setting for Ella?" Bella became almost furious. "I'm showing her that it's okay to find happiness, even if it's not what the world expects," Grace said, tearing up. The breaking point came when Grace's ex-husband, David re-entered the picture. Hearing about her new relationship, David arrived unannounced one day, claiming he wanted to reconcile for the sake of their daughter. Ken was working on a painting at the backyard when David arrived. "Grace, what is this nonsense I'm hearing? You're parading around with some small boy. Stop making a fool of yourself and come back home." "Hello to you too, David. What do you want?" Grace asked coldly. "I want you to come back. For Ella's sake. For our family's sake." On hearing this, Ken stepped in and said, "She doesn't need you to dictate her life anymore." David laughed mockingly. "And who are you?" "Her knight in shining armor. Let me tell you something, you'll never be man enough for her." Grace stepped in between them. "That's enough, David. You had your chance, and you ruined it. Ken is twice the man you ever were because he knows what love means. Now, leave." David stormed out, defeated. Grace and Ken share a moment of quiet strength. Inspired by Grace's courage, Ken created a painting titled Resilience, depicting a phoenix rising from ashes. The painting was displayed at a prominent Lagos gallery and gained widespread acclaim, finally giving Ken the recognition he deserved. He dedicated the painting to Grace, saying, "You taught me what strength looks like." One afternoon, Ella found the painting of her mother as a phoenix rising from ashes. She went all the way to Ken's studio to confront him. "Why did you paint this?" she asked. Her gaze fixed directly on Ken. "Because it's how I see her, strong, beautiful, unbreakable. She's been through so much, and all I want is to see her happy." Ella softens, realizing Ken's intentions are genuine. Seeing Ken's sincerity and unwavering support for her mother, Ella began to soften. One evening, she confronted Ken directly, asking him why he loved Grace. Ken's heartfelt response moved her, "Because she's not just a survivor. She's a light. I want to be part of the life she's rebuilding." Gradually, Ella and Grace repaired their relationship, and Ella started seeing Ken in a new light. Grace's family and friends, though slower to come around, couldn't deny the happiness and peace Ken brought into her life. 2 years later, after Grace's and David's divorce was finalized, Grace and Ken decided to tie the knot in a private romantic wedding, inviting their family members with few friends. The wedding was held in a beautiful garden. Grace walked down the aisle, radiating happiness. Ella stood beside her, holding her hand tightly as a sign of support. "I didn't understand it at first, but look at her. She's glowing." Bella, her sister, said to a friend in the audience. During the vows, the emotions were raw. "Grace, you taught me that love is not about age, but about respect and understanding. I vow to cherish you every day of my life," Ken said, tearing up. "Ken, you've shown me that it's never too late to find happiness. I vow to love you with all my heart. You are my perfect love," Grace said, holding back tears. After the wedding, Grace and Ken attended a gala where Ken's painting was auctioned for a record-breaking amount. As they danced together, Grace looked around the room, her daughter smiling at her, her friends and family finally supportive, and feels a deep sense of contentment. She realized that love doesn't have to be conventional to be perfect, it just has to be true. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this story? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this story and